Hello. So I'm gonna start doing stitch alongs at my desk instead of at my table over there. So I should be able to chat a little before we start because it's easier to flip my screen this way. So today we are going to get our hoops ready. So if you are unsure of how to get your fabric in your hoop and get your pattern transferred, that's what we're gonna do today. So what you need to have is your hoop, your fabric, whatever you're using to draw out your pattern. I'm using a Pilot Frixion fine liner black marker. And then your pattern either printed out or on a screen. So let's get started. I don't know how to turn my screen around. Hold on. Oh, there it is. It was hiding. Okay. So here we go. I have this printed this time. Normally I transfer from my screen. So if you are transferring from a screen, I will upload a video to my stories that you can see in a little bit. But what we're gonna do first is get our fabric in our hoop. Let me just zoom out a little bit there. Okay, so I usually like to have about 1 to 1.5 inches on every side of my hoop. Since this is a 7-inch hoop, to have 1.5 inches on each side would make this square about 10 inches on each side. So that's what the kids have, is 10 by 10. If it was just me, I would probably do closer to a 9-inch square just because I don't need that much extra fabric. But I want to make sure that the beginners have as much fabric as they need. So first things we're going to do is, if you're using a bamboo hoop, make sure you mark the center of your hoop right here in the middle on your inner hoop, just so you can remember where your middle is in case it gets off center. If you have a beechwood hoop or a plastic hoop, you should be good to go. Okay, so first we're gonna loosen the top of our hoop just so it will slide a little bit so we can get our fabric in there. So first we lay down our inner hoop and then our fabric. Make sure that that's pretty centered, and then our outer hoop goes over the top. Whoop. I loosened it a little bit more than I thought I did, which is fine. Okay, so then we are going to tighten this, and then we will tighten our fabric. So I get this fairly tight, not as tight as it will possibly go, but pretty tight. And then as you can see, our fabric is loose, it's crinkled. We don't want that. You're gonna have your best results with stitching if you have your fabric pulled tight. If your fabric isn't pulled tight, then it's going to pucker when you put stitches on it. So what I like to do first is to go around the edge and just pull. I kind of hold on to the inner hoop and pull out and get that fabric as tight as I can. So this will pull out any wrinkles. I don't iron my fabric. I don't have a problem with getting it nice and flat this way, so. And then I kind of go around and make sure that my outer hoop and inner hoop are lined up. So I just kind of push this outer hoop down just so it's like nice and snug, and I have just the tiniest lip right here from my inner hoop. You can kind of hear it's pretty tight already, but I'm just gonna do this one more time and tighten this. Now that the fabric is in there tighter, I can usually hand tighten this a little bit more. Sometimes if it's not getting tight enough, I'll grab my screwdriver. This needs a flathead, and I'll just go ahead and twist this around a couple of times. If it doesn't have a screw, then I get my little pliers and just tighten that a little bit. Just because we don't want our fabric slipping, we want it to stay nice and tight the whole time. So once I've tightened that, I'll go ahead and pull this one more time just to make sure it's as tight as it will go. Okay. Should sound like a drum, nice and tight. We don't want to be able to like push down and have it go too far. Now, one thing that I like to do, because these corners will catch when I'm like, because of how they hang quite a bit lower into the fabric. So I like to just cut off my corners. I don't get it too close to the hoop. I don't do anything, it doesn't look perfect. But I just trim these corners just so they're out of my way. One more. Okay. And then those can go in the garbage. All right. So now we have our fabric in our hoop and we are ready to transfer our pattern. So what we're gonna do is, I've already cut out my pattern. I'm gonna put it behind here. Sometimes it still needs a little bit of trimming. I usually cut on the inner edge of the black outline. Just so it fits on the inside of the inner hoop. Whoop. Okay. So now we have our pattern ready to go. Okay, it's not. There we go. Why is it not? It fit when I had it turned another way. Okay, hold on. We're gonna trim it a little bit more over here. There we go. Okay. So what I like to do is just push my fingers up against the back where I'm gonna draw. If you don't have, if you're struggling to see your pattern this way, just like holding it in front of you, you could also like put it up like against a window so that the window will push some light through. You could also use like a tablet screen. You can put your tablet down, turn on the screen as bright as it goes, and then you have a light source just so that you have that extra help to be able to see your pattern. But I usually find that if I push up against it, then I can draw against my fingers and it's right up against the fabric so I can see it just fine. So what we're gonna do is just go ahead and trace our pattern. I have never been one that makes sure that my patterns don't really need to be like, they're not so detailed that it has to be like exactly how it's been drawn. So it's okay if lines are not perfect. Or like things like these dots and these hearts, they don't really need to be drawn on there. We can freehand those. So if you don't want to draw them, that's totally fine. I'm just gonna draw some dots along here just so I can remember what the pattern is, but I'm not super worried about like exactly. Now this cone, because of how we're gonna stitch it, we're going to want those lines, so you can draw them now or you can draw them later when we start stitching, but we will use these lines to stitch. And then our little ice cream. Got some donuts. I'm not gonna draw both circles because once we stitch the outer circle, the inner circle will come naturally, but I am gonna draw this little wreath. I'm not gonna draw the leaves on it, but you can if you want. I just like my patterns to be as clean as possible, and then I can kind of freehand as I get stitching. So we are going to use this swirl to stitch on. So I would draw that. Oops. And then this donut, I'm gonna do the same. I'm just gonna draw the inner ring, the outer ring, and then the one around the center. So I'm also not gonna draw, like I'm not gonna make these other lines thicker. I'm just gonna remember that when we're stitching the downstroke will be thicker, like calligraphy does. Okay. Right. All these layers. They'll look different when we get stitching. Okay, so that's what we've got. Now, if you want to add more details, please feel free. You really can draw all these dots if you want, or these leaves. But that's it. That's the easy part. Okay, so if you have any questions about transferring your pattern, let me know. I like to stitch with my design on top, but I know some people like to stitch with their design, like stitch, I call this backwards, but so that they're stitching like on the inside of their hoop. You can do it either way. I prefer this way because we're gonna do some woven wagon wheels, and that is a little bit more difficult on the inside of a hoop, especially with as close as these are. So if you're tracing it with your pattern here and drawing on the inside, I would flip it over so that you can stitch it this way. Feel free to do whatever you want, but that is what I'm going to recommend to you. So yeah, let me know if you have questions, and we will start stitching together on Monday. I will start making posts about the schedule and share that in posts and on stories. So I would also recommend turning on notifications for this account. I don't generally post a whole lot unless we're doing a stitch along. So anyways, if you don't want to miss stuff, go ahead and do that, and I will see you on Monday. Bye.